June 27, 1981, Tehran. Ali Khamenei walks into the Abuzar Mosque to speak. A man posing as a journalist places a tape recorder near the podium. 1 minute later, the recorder screams, then detonates. Khamenei survives barely. His right arm never truly recovers, and his voice is permanently altered. Yet 8 years later, he will become Iran's supreme leader. So who tried to kill him, and how did that moment shape the leader who has ruled since 1989? Ali Khamenei was born in Mashhad in northeastern Iran in 1939, though even his birth date is disputed in some accounts. His family background is clerical and ethnically Azeri, a major minority concentrated in Iran's northwest. His father, Javad Khamenei, studied in Najaf, one of Shia Islam's holiest centers, before settling in Mashhad, another major pilgrimage city. The household was respected, religious, and by many descriptions, modest. Khamenei later emphasized hardship, small rooms, simple food, few possessions. Some observers think he may have amplified the austerity. But what matters is the political utility of that image, a leader who presents himself as shaped by sacrifice, not privilege. To understand Khamenei, you have to understand the Iran he grew up in, a monarchy trying to modernize fast and a religious society that never stopped being religious. The Pahlavi state pushed secular reforms, but it also built a security machine Savak feared for surveillance and repression. That tension between modernization from above and religious authority from below is the stage on which Khamenei's generation entered politics. As a young man, Khamenei immersed himself in Shia scholarship first in Mashhad, then briefly in Najaf, and later in Qom, the key seminary city inside Iran. In Qom, he encountered a teacher who would define his political life, Ruhollah Khomeini. By the late 1950s, Khomeini was already emerging as a sharp critic of the Shah. In 1963, the Shah's White Revolution pushed land reform and Western-style modernization. Clerics saw it as an assault on tradition and their influence. Protests erupted. Hundreds died. Khomeini became the symbol of resistance, and in 1964, he was exiled. Khomeini did not follow him abroad. He returned to Mashhad in part to care for his father, and that decision would later matter because critics would argue he never completed the highest level of seminary credentials. Khomeini's activism wasn't only sermons. He translated and promoted revolutionary Islamist writing, including work associated with Sayyid Qutb, to the Shah's intelligence service that was ideological fuel for rebellion. Arrests followed, interrogations, months of detention, even isolation. But the pattern was consistent: release, travel, speeches, organization, then arrest again. In 1964, he married Mansoura Koesteb Bagherzada. She remained almost entirely out of public view. They had 6 children. In later narratives, the family's simplicity became part of Khamenei's political branding, an image of discipline and sacrifice rather than luxury. An image of discipline and sacrifice rather than luxury. Islamists, liberals, leftists, everyone tried to shape what would come next. By 1978, the Shah's system was cracking. Demonstrations grew, violence escalated, and the regime lost legitimacy fast. When the Shah left Iran in January 1979, and Khomeini returned from exile in February, the revolution didn't instantly produce one unified vision. Islamists, liberals, leftists, everyone tried to shape what would come next. Over 1979, Khomeini and the clerical camp outmaneuvered rivals and anchored a theocratic model with elections, but also strict gatekeeping over who can run. Khamenei moved quickly into the revolutionary state's core: party politics, institutional purges, public religious leadership. By 1981, he was prominent enough to be targeted. And Iran wasn't facing one opposition, it faced monarchists, Marxists, and radical factions that even hated clerical rule itself. At Abuzar Mosque, the device was placed like an ordinary recorder, then detonated. The attack was linked to the Forkan group, a militant current hostile to the clerical hierarchy. Khamenei's survival became political capital, a living symbol of the revolution under attack. But physically, he carried the consequences for life: nerve damage, limited movement, a changed voice. The new republic was unstable. One president was removed, another was assassinated. In that vacuum, Khamenei ran, still recovering, and won. Iran's elections offered real turnout and competition, but only within boundaries enforced by unelected institutions. Khamenei's presidency would be consumed by one overriding event: the Iran-Iraq War. Saddam Hussein invaded in 1980, expecting a short victory. Instead, the war became a grinding catastrophe: mass casualties, chemical weapons, years of exhaustion. Some accounts suggest Khamenei favored ending the war earlier, but he was not the ultimate decision-maker. At home, the state tightened control: courts, crackdowns, and a political culture shaped by siege mentality. When Khamenei died in 1989, the system needed a successor. Fast hesitation could look like weakness. There was no obvious heir with the same weight. Khamenei emerged as a compromise. Critics pointed to his interrupted clerical training, but politics outweighed theology. He was chosen, and from that point on, Iran's institutions would increasingly orbit around his authority. Khamenei took power as the region shifted. Post-war Iraq, a collapsing Soviet sphere, instability in Afghanistan, new states on Iran's borders. Domestically, he leaned on one institution above all: the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Under his leadership, the IRGC expanded in size, influence, and loyalty, becoming not just a military force, but a pillar of internal control and regional power projection. Iran's regional strategy relied on partners and proxies. Hezbollah in Lebanon became the flagship, armed, funded, and politically encouraged to enter elections. Iran also backed Hamas, despite sectarian differences, because the shared objective was pressure on Israel. This proxy network gave Iran reach far beyond its borders, but it also locked Tehran into permanent confrontation. Iran's nuclear program began under the Shah, but it became globally explosive under the Islamic Republic. Under Khamenei, the state insisted it was civilian. Yet sanctions hardened, investment shrank, and the economy carried long-term strain. Growth surged in some periods, especially with oil revenue, but unemployment, inflation pressures, and stalled living standards fed public anger, particularly among younger Iranians. Iran held elections, and different factions did win. The Khatami era in the late 1990s promised reform: more openness, more civil society. But unelected bodies tightened the gate again. By the mid-2000s, the system turned sharper. Fewer reformists allowed, more security control, less tolerance for dissent. Student protests in 1999, the disputed election of 2009, and the attempted momentum of the Arab Spring in 2011, each episode pushed the leadership toward deeper surveillance and harsher enforcement. Institutions like the morality policing apparatus gained prominence. The state's logic was consistent: stop protest before it becomes a revolution. After October 7, 2023, the region entered a new, violent phase. Israel's campaigns hit Hamas hard, pressured Hezbollah, and the Red Sea became a battleground with the Houthis. The bigger story for Tehran was exposure. The proxy network that had created deterrence also became a chain of vulnerabilities. Direct strikes and retaliations raised a question that now shadows Khamenei's final years. Did decades of confrontation bring security or simply delay a reckoning? Khamenei has outlasted presidents, wars, and entire geopolitical eras. He built a system designed to survive pressure internally through control, externally through proxies. The unresolved question is succession. When the man who embodied that system is gone, does the structure hold, or does Iran finally change direction? Thank you for watching. Subscribe to Cadmus, like the video, and share your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next episode.